drive in the rain?
It depends on the velocity of the rain.
Buhari orders massive military operations against terrorists in Niger State.
NDLEA intercepts more illicit substances in nationwide raid.
Zamfara state government engages key players ahead of safe reopening of schools in the state.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the status report on the Economic Sustainability Plan.
Now, the biting effects of the coronavirus pandemic on the economy compelled many businesses to either shut down or shut in. And the economic uncertainties that trailed the pandemic at the onset prompted the establishment of the Economic Sustainability Committee by President Muhammadu Buhari in March 2020. That committee, chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, produced Nigeria's Economic Sustainability Plan, ESP.
Now, the key objectives of the Economic Sustainability Plan were to create and retain millions of jobs across value chains, support small businesses, give priority to local content development, and reflate the economy following the disruptions occasioned by the coronavirus pandemic, which, of course, is still raging, to say the least. Now, the Economic Sustainability Plan is a mega plan, as it were, for mega spending by government to achieve mega results in the economy.
Now, mega spendings indeed, Kingsley, with 2.3 trillion earmarked for the plan. Components of the ESP include the 75 billion naira MSME Survival Fund, Social Housing Scheme, the Solar Niger programs designed to provide electricity access to 5 million households, and the Rapid Response Register designed as an intervention to cushion the economic shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic on urban poor Nigerians who are not benefiting from the federal government's cash transfer program.
Exactly, Jumai. Now, well over a year now into the implementation of the ESP under the coordination of the Vice President. Now, we understand that some 2.1 million jobs had been retained or created through the various ESP programs. It's also estimated that more than 1 million Nigerians have benefited from the different schemes under the MSME Survival Fund, which has saved millions of jobs through various financial grants that are cushioning the impact of the pandemic on businesses.
And with the approval of a 10 billion naira grant by the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority to the Rural Electrification Agency, we hear that over 200,000 solar power systems are to be manufactured and rolled out under the solar power Niger component of the ESP, with 60,000 units expected in the fourth quarter of this year alone as part of the off-grid rural electrification projects.
Of course, Jomai, these are the programs and projects with ripple effect on jobs and wealth creation. Now, already all states of the Federation, we also understand, have received at least 1 billion naira from the MSME Survival Fund, with Lagos, Abia, and Kano states receiving more than 2 billion naira so far. Now, these funds are expected to be stimulus packages to boost both formal and informal sectors of the economy.
What has been the impact of the Nigerian economic sustainability plan so far, and what is the outlook for this year, especially in the areas of the social housing program, agriculture, social home system, and solar home systems, and other critical components of the ESP?
Pertinent issues there and many more we shall interrogate in our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. Welcome to the program, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Of course, we have our complimentary segments to add flavor to the conversation this morning. But first, let's take the morning news with Anne Jimino. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, Jume and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the news. President Muhammadu Buhari, as Commander-in-Chief of the nation's armed forces, has set the ball rolling for a major military operation in Niger State, which has faced continued attacks on its communities by bandits and remnants of Boko Haram terrorists fleeing theaters of war in the northwestern and northeastern parts of the country. In a directive to the defense headquarters, the president has asked the military to respond robustly to the cases of killings and kidnappings in the state and to give effect to the strategic objectives through the use of force. The president sympathizes with the government and people of Niger State following recent security incidents. The president says the federal government is willing to strengthen cooperation with all the states, stressing that full support of the citizens will avail the nation of a resounding victory over terrorism. And the Ebonyi State Police Command has recorded another feat in the fight against crime with the rescue of 32 children from traffickers in the state. The State Police Public Relations Officer, while briefing the press on the development, called on parents to be watchful and pay keen interest to the whereabouts of their children and wards.
First, we are going to further investigation to Imo State, where Chidera had confirmed that there are more than 20 girls in an apartment that look like a hall, and up to like 18 boys also there doing the same business in the name of networking, hawking around with products.
Meanwhile, about 2 million illicit drugs containing heroin, including tramadol, XO5 and diazepam, have been seized by the operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency in NDLEA in Edo and Kano states. The nationwide raid also led to the seizure of close to 1.9 million naira, as well as arms and ammunition. In the meantime, slightly above 2,400 kilograms of illicit drugs, including cannabis sativa, heroin, cocaine and tramadol capsules, among others, were intercepted during the week-long operation that led to the arrest of 11 suspects in some states. Borno State government has inaugurated a 12-man advisory committee on governance and development. This is part of efforts to create inclusiveness and restore the state's lost glory. Governor Babagana Umar Zulum inaugurated the committee at the Government House, Maiduguri, with a call on those concerned to cooperate to enable the advisory body discharge its responsibility.
Of making Borno State the pivot destination for business, investors and partners. In this sense, fostering the ease of doing business in our state, anchored on the respect for contractual agreements and the supremacy of rule of law, is of critical importance.
And in Zamfara State, the government there is adopting new strategies towards ensuring safe reopening of primary and post-primary schools in the state soonest. A community engagement meeting on creating safe school environment was organized for some key stakeholders from across the 14 local government areas of the state. $301 new cases of COVID-19 were recorded in the country within the last 24 hours, bringing Nigeria's caseload to 250,929. Among the new infections, Lagos State has 175 cases, Ondo 42, Osun 23, Rivers 21, Nasarawa 16, Oyo 8, Gombe and Kaduna recorded 7 cases each, while FCT and Kano have just a case apiece. 224,052 treated cases have been discharged, while the death toll is now 3,013. Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Jumai after the break. Thanks for watching.
Everybody knows the secret to good cooking is that special ingredient. The mothers know it, but does this new generation know it? Let's find out. Mothers, daughters, are you ready? Yeah! Let the cooking begin.
Erisco tomato paste. Now we get home, now we get love, now we get children. We spice the world with a meal so great and so healthy. You know we've got your back. Oh, with Erisco, Rigico, Nagico.
Ladies and gentlemen, food is ready.
Food of love. For the body, yum yum for the body.
Erisco Rigico and Nagico tomato paste is made by Erisco Foods Limited, feeding Africans with healthy foods.
Since coming into office in 2015, the Buhari administration has recorded unprecedented achievements in all sectors, especially in the provision of infrastructure, which is the key to economic growth. Never in the history of this country has any administration done so much with so little. I recall that when this administration came into office, the price of crude oil, which provides for 80% of Nigeria's budgetary revenues and 95% of foreign exchange earning, dropped drastically, thus reducing the amount of resources available to the federal government. In spite of this, the administration has continued apace with massive infrastructure developments.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. Its great value, it protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer-long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Next for us is newspaper review.
newspaper reviewer Bayo Chobi is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Jume. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
Kinsley is still, in the leave mood. He has not fully resumed. So for him to answer you is like, good morning, Bayo. So, morning, Bayo.
Don't worry, we'll soon join the leave wagon.
Exactly. Okay, let's begin with the Punch newspaper this morning. And above the masthead, we have insurance firms' assets hit 2.09 trillion amidst recapitalization suspension. You find details on page 19. Nigeria's debt stock hits 39.6 trillion in 11 months. That's coming from reports reaching us. And electoral bills takes front banner as National Assembly resumes Tuesday. Details on page 18. Nnamdi Kanu, Southeast governors, Igbo leaders to meet Buhari, insist on political solution. You find all the details on page 18. At the side piece of the Punch newspaper, Supreme Court admits registry error, reverses 2.4 billion naira ruling against GT Bank. You find details on page 7. Buhari Oshibajo shunned Twitter 72 hours after ending ban. Details on page 13. And the headlines we have from the Punch newspaper this morning: fuel subsidy crisis, state kick as NNPC continues deductions, FAC meets Wednesday. With riders, deductions not justifiable, says Delta. It is injustice against Ekiti, Commissioner. States, federal government may clash. Subsidy not under our control, says NNPC. You find all the details on page 2. And the picture story you see there, Palestinian firefighters battling flooding after torrential rains in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza Strip on Sunday. These are the pictures showing the devastating effect of the rain. Buhari orders military crackdown on Niger kidnappers, bandits. You find details on page 9. Ex-local government boss leads Zamfara community protest against attacks. 200 million naira payments to bandits. Page 4. Tinubu leads delegation to Katsina. Masari laments bandits' occupation of local governments. We find details on page 12. At the bottom plate of the Punch newspaper, NDLEA intercepts KB Kanu-bound 1.5 million tramadol, seizes Lagos ports drugs. You find details on page 5. Randy Man, 43, arrested for alleged rape of 80-year-old Nasarawa woman. He blames the devil. You find details on page 5. PDP governors meet, decide on 2023 zoning to advise National Working Committee. Details on page 2. Kinsley.
Thank you very much, Juma. Let's also take a look at the front page of the Nation newspaper. Beginning from above the name flag, Katsina reopens petrol stations and cattle markets. That's on page 8. UK scraps tests for vaccinated travelers from January the 26th. Jega urges National Assembly to drop direct primary clause. States to share $750 million for fiscal transparency. And below the nameplate, you have the following headlines. President to unveil CBN refund rice pyramids. That's page 5. Mali's ousted president dies. Now, the lead story, it's coming with two riders and, of course, a double-decker headline. Buni APC chiefs in crucial parley on zoning and convention. PDP, nobody can stampede us on presidential ticket. Opposition governors meet. Government cuts gas price to Gencos and lower electricity tariffs targeted. And then you're right there at the foot of the front page, you have the second lead story. It says, Buhari renews crackdown on bandits order to military. And President writes Niger government on directive to defense headquarters. Gunmen on bikes sack Kaduna village. Tinubu hopeful on end to insecurity. Foreign reserves rise by $12 million, and e-transmission of results, that's election results, remains shaky. Page 5. Ayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let's start with the developments relating to the instructions given by the President and Commander-in-Chief. The Nigerian military has been directed by the President to respond robustly to cases of killing and kidnapping in Niger State. Senior Special Assistant to the President, Garba Shehu, says that the President, Buhari, asked the military to carry out a big military operation in Niger State. The directive was said to have been given to Defense Headquarters, also called for solidarity and cooperation with all law enforcement agents to overcome the problems of killing in Niger State. The directives came after 3 persons were reported killed at Farin Shinge and 3 communities where 28 persons were said to have been abducted. Vice Chairman of Kontagora Local Government Area, Aliu Mariga, says that gunmen stormed Tegina in large numbers. They are demanding now 750 liters jerry can of petrol and other food items from before they will release the persons they adopted. The criminal terrorists also arrived at Kulho, which is on motorcycles, and they were shooting in the air their AK-47 at Dawari in Breningwari area. Punch reports that a gang war has in fact emanated between 2 bandit groups, and a notorious bandit leader is said to be the crux of the disagreement. And so criminals are already at each other's throat. And at Biu, in Borno State, the firepower of the Operation Wild Stroke, I think, neutralized men of ISWAP who attacked Nigeria Army University in Biu. The attack was so successful and the attackers were repelled. Many of them suffered casualties, especially the ISWAP members. The National Assembly is set to resume plenary from the end of year recess. They have been advised not to override the president's withheld assent. Rather, they should expunge the provisions of the direct primaries in that bill. Speakers at a town hall meeting organized by Yaga Africa said the electoral bill opined that the National Assembly should expunge the provisions on primaries and send the bill back to the president for assent. Among contributors were Professor Atai Rujega, the SY chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. He pointed out that the INEC proposed 36 amendments to the Electoral Act, which were intended to move the electoral system in the nation forward. 25 were accepted by the National Assembly. 5 were altered by the National Assembly. The direct primary clause should not be allowed to obstruct the positive development that has been proposed in the law. Other speakers also agreed to expunging the controversial direct primary clause and also advised that errors and duplicity of provisions that have been found in the law should also be amended before the bill is sent back. Otherwise, it could be used as an excuse not to assent to the bill. The last matches of the first round for the ongoing African Cup of Nations are to commence today, with Cameroon taking on Cape Verde, while Burkina Faso will be playing Ethiopia. In matches played yesterday, Sierra Leone forced Cote d'Ivoire to a 2-all draw. Gambia also played a 1-all draw with Mali. The upset of the day came in the Group E match, where Equatorial Guinea beat Algeria 1-0 to end their 36th unbeaten run. The West African teams are doing very well in what can be described as a tropical African Cup of Nations. Matches are now played in the evening because, as it may be recalled, the Zambian referee had to suffer a heat stroke to the extent that he ended the match twice before the regulation time. On Saturday, Guinea-Bissau pulled back a 1-0 lead by Egypt before referee used the video-assisted system to annul the goal. In fact, it can be described as video-assisted robbery because the referee was in his diagonal area. He saw the incident, he waved played on, and the chap scored, and his attention was called from the VAR, and by the time he came, he annulled the goal.
Well, I don't know. I agree with you that Guinea-Bissau would appear to have been robbed, because the goal scored by Mo Salah for Egypt was in an offside position. That's what I saw, at least from my perspective, when I was watching it on television. And then the equalizer by Guinea-Bissau was a good goal. There was absolutely no reason for disallowing that goal. Brilliant strike by that player. But of course, that's the way with football. There are questions about the quality of officiating, in some respects, with regard to the round-robin stage. We do hope that they will improve going forward. Nigeria, of course, triumphed over Sudan 3-1. It was a spectacular performance by the Super Eagles. But there's a story that I would like to draw attention to.
Yes.
And that story is on the front page of the Nation newspaper, below the name flag, the Nation newspaper. And it says, President to unveil CBN refund rice pyramids. Page 5. And that's going to take place tomorrow in the Federal Capital Territory. Let's provide some background. In the First Republic, that's to say in the 1960s, up to the 1960s, we used to have the groundnut pyramids. The groundnut pyramids were part of, if you like, the skyline of the Kano area, where bags of peanuts that had been harvested in different parts of the northern region, of course, came to the north. That was part of a colonial legacy, because the bags were intended for export.
Yes.
There was very little value addition to the groundnuts that were being grown and harvested in Nigeria at the time. Now, some years ago on Good Morning Nigeria, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who was then the Minister of Agriculture, was a guest with us here in the studios. And the conversation then got around to say, look, okay, we are boosting agriculture. Are we likely to see a return of the groundnut pyramids? And he said, we are boosting agriculture, but that it will be backward for us to be contemplating having groundnut pyramids, because that means we are not adding value to our agricultural produce. So the first question you ask yourself about these pyramids that the CBN, through its Anchor Borrowers Program, is asking the president to come and commission, is to ask you, what does it mean that you are having rice pyramids in the first instance? Are you supposed to be having storing rice in the open space?
Under the elements.
Of course, under the elements, with all kinds of moisture.
Silos all over the country.
That is the key point. And there are silos all over the country. One of the largest silos you have in Nigeria is in Birni Kebbi, in Kebbi State. So if you have harvested 1 million bags of rice paddy and so on and so forth, why don't you take them to the silos? And then you ask yourself, what today is the status of our strategic grains reserve? In the meantime, you're having this public show of rice pyramids. I've never heard of rice pyramids in the past, but perhaps this is a new one. But certainly, I'm sure that purists will quarrel with this whole idea of having rice pyramids. When we have a crisis, let's say there's a shortfall or price increases and so on and so forth, and you say release from the strategic grain reserve, what are we able to release?
Well, I also was puzzled about the rice pyramids. If you compare to the groundnut pyramids, they were conveyed at Kano for the purposes of being conveyed by train to the seaport for export. That was the essence. Here, thanks to Providence, the Anchors Borrowers Program has produced massive rice production, and we have them in bags. Rather than them being in pyramids, I think they ought to be in the markets, because like the president will always say, let us see the foodstuffs on the ground. In the market, the prices are still very high. So why accumulate pyramids and make it a big show, which is very appreciative to exhibit that, yes, we are improving in our rice production, but because of rice in the market for the ordinary man, it's still high.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And I'm sure the agencies in charge of strategic grain reserves will be in a position to answer the question what the state of our silos is at the moment with regard to. Well, if you say, look, put everything to the market, of course that could be a challenge. You should save for the rainy day. That's why we complain that some of the imported rice that we eat spent 10 years in the silos. So where do we have our own rice in our silos? We're having them in pyramids. I don't know. I think they should take a look at that again. The other good news has to do with government seeking to cut gas price to Gencos. This has always been a naughty point, and we do hope that they realize the goal at this time, even though the margin is higher than what the NLC had canvassed for. Again, for the price of LPG, that is liquefied petroleum gas, the price had rocketed late last year, and I believe, yeah, we now understand that the Nigerian liquefied natural gas program in Bonny is now devoting 100% of its LPG production to the domestic market.
Yes.
This was the same thing that was done about 10, 15 years or so ago when we had a similar scarcity. So the question would be, why allow scarcity to erupt in the first instance before you start responding in accounting for shortfalls?
It means our gas production was outer directed, not for domestic consumption.
Yeah, not for the domestic. I think it's for the Thank you so much for coming.
Too.
It's a pleasure as always. We'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin. Do stay.
The Nigerian aviation sector is rapidly growing with the construction of new international airport terminals in several regions of the country. The new Murtala Mohammed International Airport has an estimated passenger increase of 30 million annually and 15 million for Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Malam Aminu Kano International Airport is also expected to open new frontiers for the region with more travel capacity for the annual Hajj, while the new Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, avails more business opportunities connecting the industrial cities in the region to the world. These new terminals beat world-class standards with enabling infrastructure that aid air travel, tourism, and the eventual growth of the country's GDP.
Open up commerce and, of course, link us to international societies.
People from international community will come here to do business, and then that will bring in more revenue to the state.
Now, distances can be seamlessly covered as Nigeria keeps raising its bar to suit global infrastructure standards.
The center is purposely established in order to provide these services that are examinations, medical examinations, and investigations that were not provided for in Kano as well as the entire Northwest region. It's equipped with modern technological equipment in terms of radiological services. We have MRI 1.5 Tesla. We have digital X-ray as well as 4D ultrasound equipment. The importance of the center cannot be overemphasized. Just within 1 year, the center attended to thousands and numerous patients as well as medical examinations. NKDC is established in order also to provide these healthcare facilities as a discounted price.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Arise, O Nigerians! Let's applaud the courage of Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo, aka the Aggressor, for his skillful and dogged escape from the bloodthirsty bandits in the forest of Zamfara State. 3 hearty cheers also to all military and security personnel who are tirelessly protecting fellow Nigerians from insurgency and banditry while maintaining peace and order. Nigerians are proud of Abayomi Dairo and all our gallant men and women in uniform for sacrificing so much to keep us safe. We admire your courage and we say thank you. God bless the armed forces. God bless Nigeria. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and we are live. And as a prompt for our conversation, which is to bring us up to speed on the economic sustainability plan, here's our correspondent Joseph Osen with a background report.
The COVID-19 pandemic took heavy toll on world economies, with Nigeria not left out. Lockdowns froze economic activities, causing massive job losses and supply chain disruptions. This was made worse with continuous drop in prices of crude oil, which has been the mainstay of the Nigerian economy for decades. In 2020, the Nigerian economy shrank by 1.8%, its deepest decline since 1983, with the National Bureau of Statistics survey showing that over 40% of Nigerian households earn less than 137,000 naira per annum. This is barely 11,000 naira per month at a time. A recovery strategy was needed, and the federal government acted swiftly, with the president in June 2020 mandating the Economic Sustainability Committee to coordinate the implementation of the Nigerian Economic Sustainability Plan to cushion the economic effects of the pandemic. 2.3 trillion naira was approved for the project to stimulate and diversify the economy, retain and create jobs, and extend protection to the poor and vulnerable. The plan is articulated around 10 key projects: mass agricultural program, extensive public works and road construction program, mass housing program, strengthening the social safety net, support for micro, small and medium enterprise, reduction in NAFDAC registration fees, survivor fund, promotion of domestic gas utilization, and digital technology. The impact has been remarkable so far, as the country exited recession in February 2021 earlier than expected. During its first meeting in 2022, the Economic Sustainability Committee, ESP, reported to have created or retained 2.1 million jobs. Through the MSME Survivor Fund, 459,334 benefited under the Payroll Support Scheme. 307,689 benefited from the Artisan and Transport Scheme, and 250,000 business names are registered free under the Survivor Fund's CAC Formalization Support Scheme. The rice pyramids re-emerging in parts of the country reveal much of the impact in the agricultural sector. Under the Solar Power Niger program designed to provide electricity access to 5 million households, 60,000 solar home systems are expected to be delivered in the first quarter of 2022. There is no doubt the Nigerian Economic Sustainability Plan has stimulated the economy, but what are the prospects and challenges? And what more can be done to keep the nation's economy on the pedestal of sustainable growth? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be addressing these issues shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Joseph Olsen, for that elaborate backgrounder. We have with us in the studios to discuss those issues and more, the Honorable Minister of State, Budget and National Planning, Prince Claire Magba. Honorable Minister, pleasure to have you with us on the program, and I say Happy New Year to you as well.
Yeah, good morning for having me once again.
Also here with us in the studios is Ahmad Salihijo, is Managing Director, Rural Electrification Agency. Madam Salihijo, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning, and Happy New Year too.
Yeah, good morning and Happy New Year to you as well.
And joining us via Zoom is Tola Johnson. He's the Special Assistant to the President on Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, Office of the Vice President, and Project Coordinator of the MSME Survival Fund. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
All right, gentlemen, once again, I'd like to have you all join us for today's conversation. Let's begin with the Honorable Minister of State, Budget and National Planning. Our background report by our correspondent was quite elaborate in terms of the numbers arising from the implementation of the Economic Sustainability Plan, and just as well that we are now being reminded about how far the plan has gone in terms of implementation. But what else is the good news about the ESP?
Yeah, thank you very much. I listened to that a briefing a while ago on the sustainability plan, and I noticed that the health sector wasn't really covered, which was the primary reason for the economic sustainability plan. Recall that COVID-19 is a health-related issue. It gradually snowballed to becoming an economic pandemic, and more so even a security pandemic. And when the Economic Sustainability Committee was set up and the Presidential Task Force, there was a team that went around the country, and it did show that the health sector was really very vulnerable, and that the infrastructure in this sector had greatly dilapidated. So knowing the fact that COVID was something that was not really well understood by anyone in the world, it was something that just that was never planned for. There was a need, first and foremost, to save lives. So that was the most paramount thing, not just in creating jobs, but ensuring that we do not lose people, especially when it was said in Europe and America that we are going to be dying on the streets. Secondly, was an opportunity now, having seen the state of the health infrastructure, to try and upgrade them and build some form of resilience with our health sector. You recall that before COVID, if anyone was suspected to have Lassa fever anywhere in the country, you have to take the samples to Irua Specialist Hospital in Edo State. But all that has changed. How has it changed? Economic Sustainability Plan was an opportunity for us to create 52 additional molecular labs across the country in the federal tertiary, medical tertiary institutions. So it now means that if you're in Sokoto and there's a suspicion for Lassa fever, you don't need to take the sample to Ira. Whether you're in Maiduguri, Lagos, or Calabar, the samples can be taken to the tertiary hospitals within that state. So all 36 states are now covered. Only last week, in continuation of my monitoring exercise, I went to NIPRID, where they had developed active ingredients for sanitizers. Before now, we imported all the sanitizers, hand sanitizers that we are using. But with what they have developed, 50 manufacturing outfits in Nigeria now are now producing hand sanitizers. That is saving jobs. And these are additional jobs to the 2.3 million that we talked about that hasn't been covered. The ICT sector was one area that we really noticed growth because of what the sustainability plan also did in that area. We had a lot of participants who were trained on Internet of Things, installation of VSAT and others. And from my town hall meetings across the country, I found that these young men and women have even formed themselves into teams. They now have a WhatsApp group. Some who now have more than enough to handle now pass on jobs to others, and they are beginning to employ other people. Again, these numbers have not been captured because, like you know, these are informal sector. So if we get these whole numbers put together, I do believe that we had done more than 2.3 million jobs that have been created. So these are additional benefits of the sustainability plan, plus the fact that one key objective of the plan was to ensure that we did not go into a deep recession. Some countries in the world, especially advanced countries, are still struggling with a recession. Ours, we christened it bouncing back better. We didn't want to go into a deep recession or even go into a depression, which was why we had to do that stimulus. But we only had 2 quarters of negative growth. So that meant that our recession was V-shaped. So the objective of the plan itself was met. And since then, we have seen GDP go on a positive trajectory. And even inflation that few months before COVID was on the upward trend and continued for about 17 months. It's beginning to taper down now. We are now seeing headline inflation and food inflation come down. Even though it's a gradual process, but we expect that it would continue, because moving from 18-point-something% to about 15 points is something that is great. So when you look at these two economic indices, it means that we are going on the right trajectory. I know that the last month's inflation rate ought to be released today. We'll see what the numbers are, but usually the December rates are higher every year in year out because of the festivities. But even if it shows that inflation goes up, I am sure that it's going to be marginal, not something really high.
You know, you've reeled off some achievements from the plan, and it was meant to cushion the effect of COVID-19, which completely brought down the economy of the world. And it was to also identify fiscal measures of enhancing oil and non-oil, the oil sector, and reduce non-essential spending. With all this that happened, inflation, recession, and the oil, of course, losing the price, going down the drain until at a point it was at maybe $1 per barrel. How did you get the funding?
Okay, thank you very much. We had different approaches to getting funding. The sustainability plan itself, we funded in-house. There wasn't any borrowing. We had to look into some of our special accounts, and that's where we got the 500 billion that was put into the stimulus. And then the strategic revenue growth initiative, where we had to build efficiencies into our collection system, also helped a lot. If you look at the indices now in terms of the revenue profile, you find that our dependence on oil has greatly reduced. You know, about 70% of our national revenue now is from the non-oil sector. And that's why I tell people that when you say that Nigeria is a mono-dependent economy, we say no, it's no longer mono-dependent. The economy is now diversified. What we are now pursuing is what we call concentric diversification. That is, within the various sectors, diversify them more, and then grow our product space and product complexity such that our products will now be in demand by other countries. It is by so doing that we begin to earn foreign exchange. You know, once you begin to bring in the dollars and the pounds, you see the effect on the exchange rate. But what is today happening is that with COVID-19 intervention in the agri sector, you know, where we focused on ensuring reduction of post-harvest losses by creating access to the market. You know, more food is now getting out. But we are still in primary production, or rather producing commodities, which is why the new National Development Plan is having a lot more focus now on integrated rural development, where technology, other forms of infrastructure, road, broadband, and of course my brother here has a role in that, in ensuring that off-grid power is taken to the rural areas to grow all of that economy, and then attract some businesses there to begin to produce, to begin to increase the value chain of our products and build on the product complexity. Because now you produce a ton of cocoa and you sell it, say, for about $100 to the Europeans. They turn it into chocolate and bring it back to us and sell it for $1,000 per ton. So it's a net loss of $900 for us. All the hard work is done here in producing it. So these are the new focus area, because the economic sustainability plan itself has not dovetailed into the medium-term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025. So you can see the linkages, how it is, and how our revenue profile ought to grow, and is growing.
Honourable Minister, how would you address the views of skeptics about the numbers concerning the jobs that have been retained or created as a result of the implementation of the ESP?
I think you've addressed them where you've called them skeptics. We have one organization that comes out with the data as they are, and based on this data, government responds in terms of policies and programs. And when this organization, that's the National Bureau of Statistics, reads out statistics that are negative, like negative GDP growth, these same skeptics you talk about, they applaud and clap their hands and say, oh, yes, they are not doing well, okay? But when NBS comes out to say that these numbers are now on the positive trajectory, then it becomes a problem. I think they are just out to distort facts. They are politicizing things. And for us, what is important is you are the one that is driving. You can see the potholes on the road. You are the one that is flying. You can see the cloud base and decide the path to take. Because the best footballer is actually the one sitting in his bedroom watching on the screen, just like the best driver is the passenger that is in there. So I think that Nigerians need to be more patriotic. When something good has been done, they need to applaud it, to encourage those who are doing it. And then if it is indeed not so okay, it is also good to say so. But if you are constantly known to always say that things are bad, then nobody will take you serious, because you're always shouting wolf when there is none. So we can't know for sure when you are saying the truth.
Talking about not okay, in December you were reported to have been dissatisfied with the alleged misuse of 950 million naira COVID-19 fund to University of Port Harcourt Teaching Hospital. Can you tell us the update, and what about the other teaching hospitals across the country? Are you satisfied with the way they've been able to manage these funds and run the COVID-19 facilities?
Okay, thank you for this. And again, this is one area that I have issues with Nigerian journalists, because prior to going to Port Harcourt, I had visited 9 other federal tertiary institutions where I did say that the facilities I saw were world class. But these were not reported widely. But I went to University of Port Harcourt Teaching Hospital. There were 3 centers there that I inspected, the molecular lab, the ICU, where I was largely satisfied. It was in the isolation center, I really didn't see any equipment. As far as I was concerned, there was no intervention fund spent in the isolation center. But they had spoken so gloriously about the fact that they had built a new isolation center and it was world class. But what drew the red flag in me was when I got to the center, they just pointed to the building and showed me the signpost showing isolation center / treatment center, and say, oh, we built this last year. I had to, because I didn't come to look at the building. I came to see the equipment. It would be foolish or stupid of me to fly all the way from Abuja and then get to Port Harcourt only to see a signboard and turn back. So I insisted on going in, and I was told that it's a red zone. Of course, I knew that isolation centers are red zone, especially when you have patients in them. Going from the fact that I had visited 9 other centers with patients, even in the heat of COVID, and I was taken in. All I needed to do was wear the right personal protective equipment. So I asked to be given those personal protective equipment so I could go in. And then the keys were not found for me to go in. So I had to tell them that I would postpone my return date, even if it meant staying for 2 days. And then I went to look at the other items. And eventually they told me the keys had been found. And I went in, I saw beds that were probably manufactured in 1925 in the place. The mattresses that were there were so dirty. And then I was told that is the Port Harcourt suite. I wondered why the hotel I stayed The Port Harcourt suit did not affect it, and it did not affect the molecular lab in the same place. Neither did it affect the beds in the ICU. There was not a single equipment. So
how did you feel?
I felt so bad, and if you saw the video, you could see the frustration in me, because we have a president who is really very concerned about the plight of the people, a president that has got a large heart and magnanimous enough to approve that we spend these monies to upgrade our facilities. And then Nigerians don't see these facilities, and what they believe is that the president didn't approve, or the president is not concerned. So that got me really, really worried, because the intention of government is not getting to the people. But if you go to the Federal Medical Center in Abuja, or even in Abuja here, you will see the kind of facilities that have been put there. If you go to Kano, the University Teaching Hospital, you will be impressed with the molecular lab that you see there. A lot of investments have been made, that Nigerians should be proud of, and that we no longer need to utilize our hard-earned foreign exchange in traveling out to get some of this care. There's a first-class cancer center that has been built in the University of Lagos Teaching Hospital, that you really don't need to go abroad. What you will spend about $30,000 for, if you were to go to Dubai, you spend about $2 million in loot. So these are things that are there, as approved by Mr. President, that have already been done. So that's why I really felt bad about PH, and of course the agencies concerned, ICPC and EFCC, had requested for documentation, and we have provided. Mine is not to say that the money wasn't well used or it's well used. Mine is to say what I saw or what I didn't see. I had seen some other press conferences that were held by the institution's head, to the effect that there was a communication gap, and that the equipments were moved out of the isolation center because of Omicron that was coming, and they needed to fumigate the place. And that if I come back again, I will see the items.
And they will have the keys at that time when you come back again, so that they can immediately open for you to inspect. All right, Honorable Minister of State, we're going to have to pause you in the meantime and return to you in the course of the conversation. Akbar Salihijo, the Managing Director of Rural Electrification Agency. Your agency also has a role in implementing one of the cardinal plans of the ESP, as it were, and this is off-grid rural electrification. What is it that has been achieved?
Okay, thank you very much. But I think before I go into that, the Honourable Minister mentioned interventions that were carried out within the health sector. And when we first faced ourselves with this pandemic, the REA, through the supervision of the Ministry of Power, also tried to see how they could even intervene before we even had the economic sustainability plan. As the Honourable Minister mentioned, power is key to, it's a natural nexus between health provision and power, because what you find is that, especially with off-grid power, it's more reliable, it's cleaner, so you are able to power very critical infrastructure within hospitals, like the ventilators that need power, for 24 hours. So we were able to provide that sort of solution for 4 hospitals, one here in Abuja, the Gwagwalada, in the Abuja, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, then another one in Lagos, and 2 in Ogun State. So I think that set us off in terms of providing the necessary solutions that we needed during the unfortunate start of the pandemic. And as the Honourable Minister mentioned, when the Economic Sustainability Plan was launched, one of the first tasks that we had within the Rural Electrification Agency was also to identify key hospitals. So we identified about 200 primary healthcare centers within the country, and also identified about 100 unity schools that used to have smaller clinics within them. And we provided them with an array of power solutions between 5, 10 to 15 kilowatts of mini grids, including solar home systems for those. So those projects have already been completed. But to add to it, as part of the Economic Sustainability Plan, the President also graciously approved 140 billion with the CBN, where those funds were not to be spent as those funds were meant to stimulate private sector participation. Typically, we've begun to understand that as we go on in implementing projects, we cannot solely rely on the government budget. So what we have done, given the electricity gap that we have had, is to continue to create an enabling environment for private sector to bring in its own investment. So this was the form that this particular intervention took, in mirroring what we already had within the REA with the Rural Electrification Fund and the Nigerian Electrification Project. With that, we had our first milestone where through the National Power Holding Company, NDPHC, partnered with a private company, and they got a guarantee of 7 billion to provide 100,000 solar home systems. This has been launched by our Vice President and our Honorable Ministers sometime last year in Jenge, Jigawa State, and deployment of that is currently ongoing. In addition to that, we also have, the NMPC, who have also agreed to guarantee another 22 billion to provide 215 connections, which at the moment is going through board approval. And also just recently, we've partnered with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, who are also guaranteeing 10 billion naira to provide about 200,000 connections. So these are all interventions that have been put in place to encourage private sector participation to come in, have their own investment on ground, and to have favorable, loan facilities between 5 to 9% interest rates, so that we can work together with them, create jobs, and also achieve all the milestones that we are meant to achieve within the Economic Sustainability Plan, especially around providing off-grid power and also providing the jobs. And when we as government also show this sort of commitment, what you find is that other international development partners also come in to complement some of our efforts. So for instance, the World Bank has now committed to and has started providing funding for power for 100 isolation centers, even though those centers are naturally centers that were already part of a bigger hospital or a bigger facility, and that project is actually ongoing. And we'll go on and continue to improve these facilities, as the Honorable Minister mentioned, to complement the medical services that are being provided by these hospitals. So I think in a nutshell, this is the role that we've been able to play at the REA.
The 5 million solar system is supposed to target 25 million Nigerians.
Yes. What
is the progress report on that?
Well, I think for now we can say with the signing of the the NDPHC, we have 7 billion there, which is supposed to provide us with 100,000 connections. So I think overall we can say we're getting up to almost 1 million with these ones that we have in the pipeline. So with the NDPHC, with the NMPC, and the NSIA coming on board. And don't forget that these efforts, have already been ongoing with what REA has been doing, even just before the economic sustainability plan came into place. So these are connections that will continue to grow. With the Nigerian electrification project, for instance, we've been able to provide the much needed connections that we have. In addition to that, we have the Rural Electrification Fund as well. So I can say that we are comfortably moving towards the million connections mark on that.
Yeah, just before we bring in the other guests, tell us something. What is a solar home system, and how did you identify the beneficiaries?
So with the solar home system, the solar home system is a small unit of 1 kilowatt to 5 kilowatts, or even 100 watts to 500 watts, where you have an independent solution for a rural home. The idea behind the solar home system is to take power to rural homes that are too far away from the grid. So we usually have an analysis that we call the least electricity cost analysis, where we look at how far homes are away from the national grid, meaning if we try to electrify those homes through the orthodox method of providing grid extension, it will just be too expensive. And also in terms of the usage of that power, you find that those rural homes do not actually need much power. So for instance, you would not expect a rural home to have an air conditioner. So a solar home system is a system that would be able to power their basic needs. So you have, they will be able to charge their phones, they will be able to have light for illumination, and at the maximum they will have televisions. So with that, we have done a study around the country where we have used integrated energy, and we've looked at geospatially where we have these off-grid homes. So that is the kind of data we share with the private sector companies, who are the ones who usually do the deployment. So we currently have a data of up to 7 million homes that have those kind of characteristics. So this is how we go about identifying them. However, we work also closely with the private sector to ensure that wherever they are going to, we have also looked at what the ability to pay, willingness to pay survey of these communities have been, so that the private sector is able to navigate and be able to balance the intervention in terms of trying to make profit and also providing the power for the people that really need it.
Question again is, how were the beneficiaries identified and chosen? Is it you go into a village and you say, okay, the whole village, or you go into a semi-urban area or a semi-rural area and say, okay, XYZ on the following streets will give you the solar home system? How were they chosen?
So the way they were chosen depends on the intervention that we have. So if we have a government intervention, for instance, we look at the critical areas and we'll be able to intervene in those critical areas. However, if it's a private sector driven initiative, as I said, we have done a study around the whole country of about 7 million homes where we provide that data. And if we provide that data, we should remember that, as I mentioned earlier, some of these interventions are meant for the private sector, for them to be able to make money out of it. So they will have to carefully now choose between what is it that is profitable in the communities and what it is that they have to do as a social intervention. So there's a mixture of it. So this data that we provide them would be able to guide them to know which communities to go to. So if, for instance, they have 10 communities, we ensure that they go to at least 7 communities or 6 communities out of that, where they are just going to provide that power, and the other ones would be the ones they will use to have as a profit-making venture. I don't know if that sort of answers the question.
We'll just bring in another perspective here. It's a 2.3 trillion stimulus package. Of this 2.3, only 500 billion is government funding, direct government funding.
Yes.
The other 1.8 are from financial institutions. So what government has done is to negotiate through the central bank what the rates should be. And what we did agree then was that first year, 5% interest rates, and then thereafter, not more than 9%. And then with the moratorium of a year. So a lot of the 1.8 trillion funding is through private institutions. As private funding, businesses can get this funding and intervene. So the point he's making is that some of these, the intervention from his end, are being carried out by the private sector using those facilities that have been negotiated. In agri, for instance, I think there's a funding of 520 billion, for investors in the agri sector to attract. We also have a 462 billion for MSMEs to attract, just like we have the youth fund of 75 billion, which is 25 billion per year. So these are not grants. It's not coming from the government account or budget. You have to subscribe for them. The conditionalities were also negotiated to be reduced so that it's not too tedious like what you go through with the commercial banks. So that's the way these interventions went.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that clarification. Tola Johnson, we have kept you for quite a while. You're the special assistant to the president on MSMEs in the office of the vice president and project coordinator of the MSME Survival Fund. Have the MSMEs survived or are they dying?
Good morning once again, and thank you for having me. Good morning to the other guests in the House. Honorable Minister, good morning, and good morning to my other colleague. To answer your question directly, I will say that through the intervention of Mr. President, the MSMEs, as many MSMEs as possible, have survived the pandemic. Don't forget that at the approval of the Survival Fund or the NESP scheme itself, ours was to ensure that we sustained MSMEs from not losing their jobs. If you are not able to create new jobs, kindly devise a means to ensure that the ones that are already there are not lost. So we looking at our numbers, you can see that we're giving a target of 1.3 to ensure that we sustain those jobs. As it is right now, we are on almost 1 million, we're on 1 million, close to 120,000. And those numbers are still being updated. So we have, through the Survival Fund, ensured that as many MSMEs as possible have survived the pandemic. In direct answer to your question.
Well, in which of the subsectors of the economy have we had MSMEs thriving as a result of the ESP intervention?
Okay, so now if you look at the different tracks, you look at there's one particularly called the payroll support. Now the payroll support, what that was supposed to do was to ensure that let's say teachers in private institutions, different private institutions were supposed to help pay salaries of their staff for 3 months, augment salaries of their staff. Now, we're supposed to pick at least 10 in each institution. If you pay your salary, your staff above 50,000 naira per month, you give us 10 staff that we can augment and pay. If you pay them above 50,000, we'll pay you the 50,000 that we can afford as government. But we'll pay 10 staff. You will be the one that will nominate those 10 staff that you think should get that government support for 3 months. So some companies got as much as 500,000 every month, while the minimum any company got was between 150, 200 per month. Now, that sector in particular, that's the greatest beneficiaries of that particular one was the teaching institution, the private teaching institutions. Most of them were able to support their staff for these 3 months, like I said, and they were now able to have some money in their hands to do some other things. It was, for them, it was a huge relief one of the issues we faced initially was that when we came up with these schemes and we started making the rounds, telling everybody this is what the government has said we should do, this is what we're going to do, there was this belief. Nobody believed us. Nobody thought that. There was a story of, government has come again, story. But by the time we made the first set of salary payments, our numbers jumped in our portal significantly. So I would say that the educational sector benefited the most with regards that. And another thing is, if you look at the fact that we have been able to register 250,000 new businesses. You might say they are micro businesses, but out of the 45.1 business and micros and 45.1 MSME businesses in the country, almost 95%, if not 97%, as at the last survey, are micro. So we've been able to register 250,000 new businesses. This is very important. Why is it important? It is important because now these businesses were not registered in the past. Now they are registered. Give them a year or two. These businesses will start paying some form of tax. It leads to an increase in revenue for the government as well. 250,000 is very imperative. And why did we even think of this particular registration? It was because of one of the schemes that Mr. President approved in 2016 called the National MSME Clinic, where the VP goes around, look different states with the governors of those states and interact with MSMEs and find out what their issues are. We realized during one of those programs, this is in partnership with the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment. The Minister of State usually accompanies His Excellency. Now, we realized during those programs and one of those clinics that a lot of creative businesses were not even registered. And they will tell you that 12,000 naira to register their businesses was a major issue. So we noted that down and said that at some point as a government, we're going to try and register businesses for free. And I think COVID-19 provided them that opportunity for us to do that.
Okay, Tola Johnson, did some of the principles of the design and implementation of the plan is all about local content and self-reliance. How has this plan impacted the informal sector, and how many people out there were able to retain their job, because the private sector was most hit by COVID-19?
Okay, now when we're talking of how many people have been able to retain their jobs, okay, so for the payroll, we've been able to so far support 459,000 individuals. 459,000 individuals, and almost 75,000, close to 100,000 businesses accounted for these 450-something thousand individuals. Now, the number we are shooting for is 500,000, and as we speak, we still have 31,000 on our portal, which we are currently verifying to ensure that the potential beneficiaries are still in those businesses, so that we don't pay people that have left those businesses. Now, we have 307,000 so far in the artisan and transport sector that have benefited from a one-off 30,000 naira grant. And when we say 30,000, some people say 30,000 in the scheme of things, 30,000. Like the Honorable Minister, HMS budget is saying that he's been making the rounds, just trying to monitor. At some point, the chairperson and the steering committee, we decided to go around some of these, our beneficiaries. And I think one lady was giving her experience, and she was saying to the HMS, that's Ajia Katagun, that, she got her 30,000, that's an artisan, she's an hairdresser. She got her 30,000, and that the first thing she did was she went to the market and she stocked up. So the word I stocked up caught my attention. So I became curious. 30,000. So she started telling me all the things she bought with 30,000, basically. And she told me that to have been able to spend 30,000 on the go, she will have needed to work for at least 3 weeks straight. So what you might think is not important, or what you might think is small to you, it was very huge to some people. Now, don't also forget that there are 82,000 small businesses that were given 50,000 naira grants. Now, these are businesses that their total value may not be more than 150,000. But we just said, you know what? We know that the pandemic has affected virtually every business across the world. Now, in order for you not to pack your business or fold up, take 50,000 naira and use it to support your business in whatever means you can. Now, you're talking about local content. There's an aspect of our survival fund called the guaranteed offtake. When the scheme was conceptualized in 2020, that was at the height of the pandemic, this was supposed to cater for the manufacturing sector. They were supposed to produce a lot of face masks, hand sanitizers. Then the federal government was now supposed to offtake those hand sanitizers and face masks from these people. So what we're trying to do was to ensure that those in that space got job and then got some money, and federal government in return got some products back. What we tried to do across board in all these schemes was to collectively touch bits and pieces of everywhere to ensure that truly, a lot of businesses survived, basically.
All right. Thank you very much, Tola Johnson, for the points you've raised. But I just wanted to clarify this. I think sometime last month, the Vice President was in Benin, Edo State, to commission a shared facility for furniture makers. Of course, everyone knows that Edo State is the headquarters of furniture making in Nigeria. Was that part of the ESP?
Now, that is part of the overall picture. If you recall, at the beginning of the interview, I had said that sometime in 2015, early 2016, Mr. President and the NEC approved something called the MSME clinics, the National MSME clinics. In these clinics, His Excellency was asked to champion the movement around the country and trying to resolve a lot of MSME issues. Now, like I said earlier on, this is in partnership with Trade and Investment. The Minister of State usually accompanies His Excellency. Now, in those clinics, a plethora of issues come up. And what we do as federal government is see how we can resolve those issues with the state. Now, one of those issues are issues of access to infrastructure and access to world-class equipment. Now, we now realize that what we could do as federal government was to provide something called shared facilities. And that is what you're talking about. His Excellency has commissioned 5 of them. He commissioned 5 last year, we'll be commissioning 12 this year. Now, those shared facilities, what do? Those shared facilities, we go into a state and look for an area where you have MSMEs already coexisting and doing their businesses. We look for an area where MSMEs are like in their thousands and just running their businesses, but lacking world-class or international equipment. So what we do as federal government is speak to our partners, our private sector partners, and say, you know what, we've identified a place in Edo State, for instance, where MSMEs are they are manufacturing furniture, but it takes them a week to get it takes them a week to produce 50 doors because all they are doing is manual. But if you give us equipment that can support them, they can produce 250 doors in a day. So that is what we did for Edo State. And immediately His Excellency commissioned that. The governor committed to actually replicating that in some of their technical colleges. In Ugbenike, Anambra, we did the same thing for their shoe cluster. Prior to the shared facility, some of the people we spoke to, some of the local shoemakers, they said to us that they used to make shoes. It took them like within a week, they would make about 100 shoes manually. And we asked them, what about bringing an equipment? Because Ubinike, we had about close to 20-something thousand MSMEs in that area, basically all making shoes. like they even form themselves to an association of some sort. If we bring in some of this equipment, how will it help your production? Because the equipment we supported the state with in Anambra allows you to manufacture 1,500 pairs of shoes in a day. So look at somebody that used to, or look at a group of people that used to make 100 pairs of shoes in a week, and they now have access to a world-class equipment that can enable them manufacture 1,500 in 1,500 in a day. So the essence of some of these things are that the federal government is just trying to say to state governments in partnership with the state governments that these things are possible. So when the federal government commissions one, it is expected that the state governments replicate them in at least three senatorial zones within their states. So we also launched one. If you recall, in 2020, the first of these that was commissioned at the heat of the pandemic was that of the market in the Zakibia market in Benue State. That is a market with well over 40,000 people that come there every day. The yam production market that was lacking storage facility. People who produce yam, one of the biggest yam production markets in the world. People who produce yam, and those types of yam just go bad because for lack of storage facilities. Now we're able to was able to commission a 200,000.
Okay, Mr. Tola Johnson, we have to go back to some of our guests because time is really not on our side. But we'll get back to you so that you can explain some of the things when we return to you. Let me talk to the Honorable Minister now. Some of the basic needs of humans is food, clothing, and shelter. And the program is, as much as possible, trying to address the deficiency in our housing scheme in this country. And what are the components of the program when it comes to housing, and what is the yardstick would-be beneficiaries will have to use to get access to these houses?
Okay, thank you. This isn't an area I have so much of details about. What I do know, because this is being handled by the Ministry of Works and Housing, what the program has been designed for is to have houses that are low cost, so that they can be easily accessed by Nigerians. Build something that is within the 2 to 3 million threshold. And because they are being built in large quantities, a lot of the equipment or materials to be used are bought in large quantities. So there is this comparative advantage that you have in terms of the pricing. But the whole idea is to ensure that things are done manually so that hands will be employed. Two, that local materials are used, aggregates and all of that, even in terms of the road rehabilitation that was done, to ensure that materials that are sourced locally is what is used in all of these programs. Again, remember that the whole idea was just to retain jobs. Even if we are not able to create, don't let us lose jobs. But where we've been able to retain jobs, create additional jobs. And that's what all of these programs were about.
All right, thank you very much.
But I wanted to add something on what Tola was saying. I know that we have a lot of warehouses across the country, and in the 36 states that are full of materials that we took from MSMEs. Quite recently, I think at the last meeting of the Sustainability Committee we found that some states are not meeting up. And just for equity purposes, we're trying to reach back to about those 3 or 4 states where we've not had a lot of participants, because you do not want to favor one state over and above others. Again, these interventions require that you apply for them. You request to, like the MSME Survival Fund. I know of someone in Edo who had contacted me that 3 of her staffs refused to come to work after receiving the first set of monies that were paid, and she felt that we needed to tweak the program a little more. But what for me was important was the fact that it was actually getting to Nigerians. For an employer to now complain that the staff, had disappeared because they were getting money. And from the town hall meetings that I attended, I think it was both in Kano and in Lagos, where some participants had multiple benefits from different interventions. In Lagos, I asked the gentleman, how come you had 3 different benefits from 3 different programs? Who did you know? He said, I was at home doing nothing. The whole country was locked down. I had a laptop. I had data. So I just went and applied for everything. And I received a response. And I got these 3 interventions. He said, so I told my friends. He said, they didn't believe me. One of them applied, and he also got. And he said, that my friend is here with me. What that tells me is that there was some form of transparency in the way and manner that it was done. But it also threw up a challenge. It meant that we are reaching fewer Nigerians. If one person can have 3 benefits, and then there are a lot more other Nigerians. And again, this was brought to the fore when we were all giving our reports. And His Excellency, the Vice President, has now called for the aggregation of data between the different MDAs. So there's a team now being led by the Honorable Minister for Communication to find a way to bring this data together and to ensure there's visibility with the various MDAs, so that if one person is benefiting from a program, then he cannot benefit from another. That way we're able to reach a lot more Nigerians.
Indeed, Honorable Minister.
Yeah, well, Juma, we're taking a break. Just to, as it were, close this point that the Honorable Minister was talking about. In the aftermath of the #EndSARS protests, of course, ministers were mandated to go back to their various states to hold town hall meetings. And some of the ministers were also our guests on Good Morning Nigeria. And part of what emerged from their interactions had to do with the fact that a number of the youths complained about not being aware of government programs or being too skeptical to participate in government intervention programs. Now, how did we try to reach those persons? We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Finally, the hero of Nigeria's democracy has arrived. He shall usher us into a new phase of development, peace, and prosperity. He is the father of the new Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Welcome to another season of giving Nigerians hope yet again. We are sure of a great future for both ourselves and generations yet unborn. We look forward to your leading us as a nation into our manifest destiny. Though the challenges against us as a people are many, we know that your leadership shall set us on the right path to our greatness. A new dawn beckons on us all, and having you as our president is a precursor to this. Thank you for believing in Nigeria. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Since coming into office in 2015, the Buhari administration has recorded unprecedented achievements in all sectors, especially in the provision of infrastructure, which is the key to economic growth. Never in the history of this country has any administration done so much with so little. I recall that when this administration came into office, the price of crude oil, which provides for 80% of Nigeria's budgetary revenues and 95% of foreign exchange earning, dropped drastically, thus reducing the amount of resources available to the federal government. In spite of this, the administration has continued apace with massive infrastructure developments.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who's a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
All right, you are welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's bring in our other guest, Ahmad Salihijo, who is Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency, to speak some more about this program. In terms of the, let's say, the solar program that you are running, off-grid provision of electricity, the government component of it, or even that component financed by the private sector, what would you be happy to see if you were to go back in 2 years' time to those beneficiaries? I'm asking this question because part of our national experience is that we're pretty good at launching, and then going forward, you see things collapsing.
So the expectation from us is that beyond providing electricity, we've talked about how electricity is critical to building the economy. So for us at the REA, we want to look at it beyond taking the electrons. What have those electrons done for the rural dwellers? So we look to see how productive use has been put in place to ensure that the power that we're taking is translating into direct economic activities. So we've had examples where we've gone and we have provided power to communities, and when we go back, we realize that that power that were provided has actually become, an industrial. So for instance, we have areas where you find out that rice mills are coming up, you're having more barbers shops, you're having more economic clusters, more commercial hubs where activities have been increased. So for us, I think this is the most important thing. Then secondly, of course, is to ensure that those projects remain sustainable. So as part of these efforts is the reason why private sector participation is very, very critical. And we also ensure that we set up cooperatives at the community level where they tend to have some ownership of some of these projects that we launch. So for instance, in Cross River State, we have a project where we have provided a mini grid through the capital project. So this is solely budgeted through government. And we now have, for the first time, a tripartite agreement between government, the community, and the developer, who have agreed jointly that they would go ahead and maintain this plant to ensure that the people using it continue to use it and benefit from it. So I think for me, this is the dream. Whenever you go back, you can see where exactly the power has helped them and what they have been able to do to improve their lives.
Where are these materials for this solar system sourced from?
So right now, with the economic sustainability plan, we are encouraging and providing that environment for it to be manufactured and assembled locally. But of course, we also have to be a bit realistic that it will take some time for that to happen. So for the beginning, we are importing some of these materials, but then what we do is that we give you a target for localization. So if you have, say for instance, bringing in maybe 100 units, what we expect is that at least maybe if you import 20 or 30 of them, the rest of the 80 or 70 should be manufactured locally or assembled locally. So we've had for now incidents where there are some assembly plants that have been coming up in some parts of the country, in Kaduna, Kano, Lagos, and some other few states who have actually benefited from accessing these funds and ensuring that they are now manufacturing or assembling, should I say, locally. Because manufacturing is still a bit far away, but then they tend to bring in semi-knockdowns to come into the country and assemble them locally. So we've had that coming up.
Salhejo, I would like you to speak to this, because years past, we had the unpleasant experience in some locations around the country, where, for instance, the RAA, that is the Rural Electrification Agency of the federal government, will be having a project, an electrification project for a community, say in the Niger Delta area. The NDDC will also be having an electrification project. You are having cables and poles all over the place. The lawmakers will also be having their own constituency project relating to electricity in the same locality. At the end of the day, you have wires and poles, but no electricity. Have you had that challenge in the course of implementing this critical aspect of the ESP?
I believe that is a challenge that comes with a lot of government programs where, you have a continuous need to have coordination between various stakeholders. And I think we're making a lot of improvements because for me, for instance, one of the first things I did when I came into office is even to call in the National Assembly and people in my power committee to have a meeting, to have a workshop with them, so that they understand that, most of the time when these projects are being initiated, it's important to initiate them through having a need for them, So we try to educate all stakeholders around what informs how you even go about electrification. It's not just about, as you said, cables and transformers. There are some areas where are too far away from the grid to benefit from that kind of intervention. So with the ESP, because most of what we've been doing, to be honest, has been off-grid power, and the source of funding here has been directly, as the Honorable Minister mentioned, either through the government or through the private sector. We haven't really had that sort of issue of having too much of an interference or too much of other stakeholders coming in, because the program has been deliberately designed to achieve those exact milestones that have been put into the program.
Okay, thank you. Let's join Tola Johnson. Tola Johnson, part of the implementation of the plan is the expansion of the national social investment programs like trader money, anchor borrowers, conditional cash transfer. Would you say it's a success story out there? The vulnerable, the poor, the extremely, young men and women out there who want to do little business, have they been able to access credit facilities based on this plan?
Okay. So, first, the trader monies of this world that you're mentioning, was to give 10,000 to the very, very vulnerable business owners, market women, and all not. And I remember when that scheme was launched, it was initially criticized for being too small, but I was privileged to be part of the people that went around with His Excellency in some of those markets, and I saw people crying for receiving 10,000 naira grants that came to them. Nobody took their money. It was just 10,000 naira. But I saw people passionately just thanking the government, saying, "Thank you for this 10,000 naira. I'll go to the market and buy some things basically, and I'll repay at the end of the month. Now, overall, access to funding or access to finance is one of the greatest issue MSMEs are facing in this country. And it is not like, I always say that there's access to finance, but it is just not at the right structure or at the right tenor. If somebody is telling you to come and collect a loan or a facility